Thank you very much, and good evening. I almost feel like I'm at home. I was raised Catholic. I attended the only African-American Catholic university in America, Xavier in New Orleans, and we're the only Catholic university that can lay claim to having been founded by a saint. When Pope John Paul canonized Mother Catherine Drexel in 2000, that allowed us to say that there are other universities named after saints, but we're the only one in America founded by a saint. So I feel at home in the facility. I also feel at home because of the cause. Because of the cause. And how you are addressing the cause. And before I share that, let me say that I am very pleased to have been reelected to my last term in the Florida House. I have served the 4 counties of South Pinellas, North Manatee, North Sarasota, and the southern tip of Hillsborough, Ruskin, for the last 6 years in the House. And I've learned a lot in these 6 years. It's sometimes difficult to be a Democrat in a Republican House. But part of why I identify with you, and it's not because I just became a grandparent in the last 2 years, it's because of dealing with pain, dealing with alienation issues, dealing with the disappointments of life. On March 17th of this year, I will celebrate 17 years of clean time, which for some of you who may know means I have ascribed for the last 16 years, 10 months, and a couple of weeks to the Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous program. And we begin many of our meetings in peer group, identifying with each other and giving support to each other and being transparent in our feelings and in our attempts to deal with pain. And so it was very refreshing for me, I'm getting goosebumps, to hear what was being read in the beginning about the group. And it took me a while to get there, but I'm glad I'm here. It took me a while to get here, but I'm glad I'm here. And I encourage you, and I want to talk for a few minutes about the bill. And this is the 3rd year. I believe the 3rd time is a charm. The issue was first brought to me by Yvonne Stewart. Some of you may know that name, some of you may not know the name, but her beautiful daughter, Michelle Parker, was delivering her 2 children to the baby's father for a visitation. And the baby's father was the last to see Michelle alive. She has now been missing 3 years. He's presumed to be a person of interest, not classified as a full suspect. But when you look at his long history of domestic violence, both on Michelle and others, it's not hard to think that he had something to do with the disappearance. Be that as it may, Michelle's parents, her mother, Yvonne, all she wanted was the opportunity to continue to connect to her daughter through her grandchildren. All she wanted was the opportunity to participate in their development, in their living, in their growing, in their happiness. And their father was denying them that opportunity. And so they looked to the court system because, after all, this is America. And in America, we should have access to the courts for redress of injuries, of harm. And she found out very shortly that because Florida has a state constitution which extends to its citizens rights of privacy, the Florida Supreme Court and district appellate courts held that unless there was some compelling state interest, the sacrosanct privacy right of that parent, of this young man, must be respected. And they denied her visitation. They denied her the right to participate in the development of her grandchildren. And so the issue came to me. And I filed the bill the first year, which would have really opened the door. It passed the first committee unanimously, with Yvonne Stewart coming, bringing over 4,000 signatures on petitions, bringing a contingent of people to the committee hearing to testify, and we thought we were on our way. But unfortunately, there was a representative that didn't like it, and didn't like the fact that, in his opinion, he felt like it violated the privacy rights, and if Michelle's parents had not developed a relationship with the children's father while Michelle was alive, so sad, too bad. And Bill died. But I've learned in this process that you can't always get everything you want the first time out of the box. And we came back at it the second year. This time, this particular representative said, you know, I like it, but I really think it still gives too much away and intrudes too greatly upon this private parental unit's right. So, if you ever heard how in the legislature, when we are creating laws, like making sausage. So in order to move something along, I had to dilute it a little bit. The bill says that the grandparent of a minor child whose parent is deceased, missing, or in a persistent vegetative state may petition the court for visitation. And then it sets out factors that the court can consider, like the best interest of the child, like significant harm to the child's development. And then it went down the list and said basically the court can have a preliminary hearing. There must be a superficial showing of harm or that it was in the best interest of the children. They would refer the parties to mediation first before litigation. And if mediation broke down, then the court would have a full hearing like a trial and then make a determination. But in order to get it moving, what was suggested to me was in limited situations where the remaining parent had been convicted of a felony or crime of violence. So if you understand what I'm saying, that narrowed the number of people who would be eligible to petition. So if the remaining parent had never been convicted of a felony or a crime of violence, you can't petition. And the thought process of this representative was, well, Darryl, it fits your fact pattern. This gentleman has a long history of violence. And by narrowing it, you make certain members of the legislature happy that you're not broadening this thing and opening it up to anybody and everybody, even though we had a provision that said you can't do this multiple times, time after time after time. You can't be harassing in your petitions. So with that narrowed scope, I accepted it because I figured it would at least crack the door open. Give us something that we could later build upon and broaden with empirical data. And so on the last day of session, on my second attempt, we resurrected the bill, passed it out of the House. It went over to the Senate, and it died with 1 hour to go in session. Ran out of time. So we have refiled it this year. And the first committee that it's in is Representative Kathleen Pasadomo. I spoke with her very briefly today. She would have been here, but she's out of town. She's in Cleveland. I believe she supports the bill. I need her support. I've talked to the vice chair of her committee, Mike Hill, Representative Mike Hill out of Pensacola. He wants to be a co-sponsor of it. He believes in it. But I'm going to find out next week, maybe even by tomorrow or Monday, whether or not it's agended and to be heard. And the first two committees, Representative Pasadomo's committee is the first committee. The second committee, Representative Pasadomo is the vice chair of that second committee where it's going, the Judiciary Committee. So I'm hopeful that if it gets out of her committee, it'll sail through the second. And then it has one more committee reference? Yes. One more committee reference after that. And if we can get it through that committee, it hits the floor. And if it hits the floor and passes out, then we're waiting on the Senate. Now, how can you help? I'm glad you asked that question. First thing you can do is write. Email or handwritten letters to your state representative and your state senator, telling them how important you think House Bill 149 is. And remember my caveat, it's not everything we want. It's not the whole ball of wax. It's only about 60% of the wax of the apple. But it starts a process that we can build upon. After you email or write your state representative or your state senator, if you can, come to Tallahassee when it's up in front of a committee. Testify. Talk about how important it is. Make a visit to your state rep or your state senator while you're in the building. Let them know that's why you're there. We know that it's a sacrifice for people to come to Tallahassee. That's why they put the capital out of the way. Instead of in the central part of the state. And when you come, you bring voice and face and life and color to the issue that is otherwise black and white in staff analyses that we're reading. At the appropriate time, contact the governor's office, because if it passes out of the House and passes out of the Senate, we got one man with the stroke of a pen that could veto it. Those are some things that you can do to help this legislation. We're going to work hard on it this year, as we have in years past. I wish I could guarantee its passage, but I feel very good about it this year. And some representatives who were opposed to it before are now supporting it, but we can never take anything for granted. And the issue is too important, not just to your community, all over the state. You heard the statistics. 60% of Floridians are 60 years and older. And I'll be there in 6 more months. Good Lord willing. So that's kind of where we are with the bill. I'd like your help, and I'm available to stay for the rest of the meeting and answer any questions or anything you might